One of the most frequent questions I get asked as a creator who primarily talks about The Last of Us is whether I think there will be a third installment in the series, and if so, what I think it will be about. I've talked about this a few times over on my TikTok account, but wanted to organize my thoughts into a more formal video for you guys, going over my theories and ideas, as well as my general sentiments around The Last of Us Part 3 coming to fruition. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. I'm a lesbian writer and game developer who analyzes The Last of Us and other queer games here on YouTube and over on my TikTok account. If you haven't yet, I'd love it if you checked out my other video essays if you enjoy deep dives on lore, narrative, and game design. This video will be a bit of a departure from my usual content as it's not really an analysis, but I'll still be exploring elements from both games that inform my ideas. So without further ado, grab some snacks and your favorite beverage and let's get into it.
I've been just thinking about, okay, is there a concept there? And for now years, I haven't been able to find that concept. Yeah. But recently that's changed. And I don't have a story, but I do have that concept that to me is as exciting as one, as exciting as two, is its own thing, and yet has this through line for all three. So it does feel like there's probably one more chapter to the story.
What? That's the end? In order to explore my theories about what Part 3 might be about, we'll need to operate under the assumption that there will be a Part 3 at all. The ending of the Grounded 2 documentary had me pretty convinced that it was all but confirmed, and I still don't believe that Naughty Dog would have implied that The Last of Us story isn't over if another installment wasn't being developed. Neil Druckmann has also hinted that there is more The Last of Us coming since then, but now that he and Hallie Gross have stepped away from The Last of Us on HBO to focus on completing Naughty Dog's next game, I doubt we will receive any formal announcement until they finished working on Intergalactic. Neil has made it very clear that they will only make another game if they can find a story worth telling and dedicating the next several years of development to. He's also suggested that he's not sure how many big games he has left in him to create, and with how controversial Part 2 and the HBO show was, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he steps away from The Last of Us entirely. The people who develop these games are, in fact, people, and I can imagine that watching their work get torn to shreds time and time again would take its toll on their mental health and well-being. The Last of Us has a very large and passionate fan base, and everyone seems to have their own ideas about what they would expect in a Part 3, so Naughty Dog is never going to be able to please everyone if they continue the series. A third installment has the potential to be even more divisive than Part 2, and I honestly shudder to think of how the community will respond if they don't get exactly what they want. If you really want more The Last of Us, be prepared that it might not be what you want or expect, and I implore you to be open-minded about what Naughty Dog may eventually cook up for us. All of that being said, if there is going to be a Part 3, here are a few things I think it could be about. The Last of Us Part 2 majorly expanded the cast and added a ton of new characters, so I expect Part 3 will do the same. One of my theories is that we will actually play as a new character, and this person will cross paths with Ellie in a significant way. Maybe this new character will be young, and Ellie will become their mentor or guardian, filling the role of Joel or Abby for the player. This would be an interesting way to flip the concept of an older survivor traveling with a younger companion that has been present in both games. But maybe this time, the player plays as the younger character, with Ellie watching over them. Or maybe the new character will encounter Ellie more briefly, but in a way that is still important and impactful for their story.
I've never met another immune person before. Have you?
I also suspect we might meet another immune character in Part 3, whether or not it's the player character. Maybe someone is weaponizing their immunity the way Ellie started to at the end of Part 2. Or maybe someone imagines themselves to be some sort of messiah whose immunity holds the key to humanity's salvation. Maybe, given that the HBO show seems to have confirmed how Ellie became immune in the first place, a group or faction will have also figured this out in Part 3, and are doing some really fucked up things in an effort to create a new immunized population. In any case, I highly doubt that even if there is a group intent on pursuing the cure, that will be a major plot driver for Part 3. These stories have never really been about the cure. It's always been about people struggling to find meaning and purpose in a dangerous, lawless landscape, and I feel quite certain that that overarching theme will continue in a third installment.
If the Fireflies are still out there,
Yeah.
what do you think they're up to?
I don't know. The goal was always to restore society. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to go about it.
If Part 3 carries on Abby and Lev's story, and to be honest, I think that is a big if as much as I would love to see more of them, we will probably also get a new cast of characters with the Fireflies who have been regrouping on Catalina Island and learn what their new goals are. Will they still be intent on restoring society, or will they be up to something else? This leads me to my next theory, which is that Part 3 will tackle the theme of the generational divide between the pre- and post-outbreak generations. My longest running theory has been that the us in The Last of Us refers to the pre-outbreak generation, those who remember the way the world was before it effectively ended. So what if Part 3 deals with the end of The Last of Us, making way for a new generation of people with completely different experiences and ideas for a new world? We have already started to see this transition, with Part 1 taking place in Joel's perspective as a member of The Last of Us generation, and Part 2 bringing us a huge cast of younger characters who were all born post-outbreak. In The Last of Us Part 1, the Fireflies' initial goal was to reinstate a national government and unify society by developing a cure and fighting back against Fedra's fascist regime. If any of those Fireflies are still around and seeking to restore some sort of democratic government body, they will likely find themselves clashing with the younger generation whose entire lives have taken place in this post-outbreak context.
Yeah, I thought you went to school.
Fedra school teaches how their shitty government failed to prevent a pandemic.
The younger generation will have no desire to return to a way of life that they've never known, and will wonder about the effectiveness of a governing system that failed so spectacularly and ultimately collapsed in the wake of the outbreak. They will want to define a new society and way of governance, and will probably have many different ideas about what that might look like. There's also the matter of whether unifying the country is even possible at this point without a significant amount of violence, which some might be for and others against. With the way the surviving population has divided into isolated groups and factions with their own rules and systems, the Fireflies will be hard-pressed to get all of them on board with following any sort of national law and identity. This could be the setup for a larger scale conflict than we've seen so far in the Last of Us series, perhaps even leading to some sort of civil war. Another thing the Fireflies could be up to is dealing with the fallout of the Rattler gang in the Southern California area. Since Part 2 obviously deals heavily with the events at the end of Part 1, it may be interesting if Part 3 deals with the consequences of how Part 2 ended. In the final chapters of Part 2, Ellie freed the prisoners at the Rattler camp, who ostensibly went on to annihilate any Rattlers that Ellie herself didn't take care of, destabilizing the balance of power in the area. But there are a couple of artifacts in the Santa Barbara chapters that hint that the Rattler conflict may not be over. In Abby's letter that Ellie finds on the sailboat, she writes that the area is rumored to be haunted, like some sort of Bermuda Triangle where people disappear. The implication, as we learn more about what's going on here, is that the Rattlers have been kidnapping and imprisoning travelers in the area for quite some time. Additionally, before Ellie enters the resort, she finds this note from someone named Mackenzie, who escaped the Rattler camp and promised to return with others to get revenge. And lastly, when Abby makes contact with the Fireflies, the guy on the radio tells her that they had pulled everyone from their satellite stations all over Southern California and brought them back to their home base, but didn't say why. This could imply that the Rattlers' activities were starting to become a threat to the Fireflies, especially since the 2425 base has obviously been overtaken as part of Rattler territory. Although, if the Fireflies were aware of the Rattlers, I don't know why the guy didn't warn Abby about them. I've seen other theories that it wasn't actually Fireflies Abby connected with on the radio at all, but was instead Rattlers intent on trapping them, but I don't personally believe that that was the case. There are too many hints about a Firefly regroup throughout the game for it to have all been a hoax, and the changed menu screen in the endgame with Catalina Island in the distance has always implied to me that Abby and Lev did manage to find the Fireflies.
Assuming all the leads dry up, where would we go?
West. See what's out there.
It's nothing but ocean.
And past it?
Other countries, I guess. You want to do that?
Why not?
Good question.
The Last of Us has always felt like a distinctly American story, but there's also been the question of what happened in other countries following the outbreak. Has the entire world become like post-outbreak America, or have they found ways to rebuild, for better or worse? What sort of conflicts and challenges might other countries be facing, and how might the CBI have evolved in different climates? How might the collapse of America as a superpower affect other countries? It would be fascinating to explore how another country's ethos has manifested in this context, and how it might compare and contrast with what's happened in the States. I mean, Mexico is right there, and so is Canada. Just saying.
Jesse talked a lot about going to Canada.
He said there's these, like, giant waterfalls out there he wanted to see.
You want to keep going? Just drive all the way to Mexico?
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
As for Ellie, now that she is truly on her own and able to decide where to go and what she wants, I feel that the majority of her journey in part 3 is going to be about discovering her purpose, finding her light, her something to fight for. Maybe that will manifest into looking out for a younger counterpart like it did for Joel and Abby, or maybe she will find a new community where she truly feels like she belongs. Or maybe they will bring back a scrapped concept from both part 1 and 2 and give Ellie a furry companion, and maybe keeping them alive will be her purpose. The combat and puzzle-solving potential of playing as a character traveling with a dog companion is endless and would make for a really interesting twist on existing gameplay systems that The Last of Us is known for. In any case, I highly doubt that Ellie will return to Jackson, and I also don't think any of the Jackson cast will return in part 3. This includes Tommy and Maria, and Dina and JJ. I think that part of Ellie's life is too painful and closely tied to Joel, and she will be looking to move on and define her own future for the first time in her entire life. The ending of part 2 certainly suggests this, with her leaving behind the last physical piece of her connection to Joel and walking away into the unknown. If you had to boil down each game so far into one word that it's about, I think part 1 is about love and part 2 is about hate. With that in mind, the one word I think might sum up part 3 is hope. Hope for Ellie and hope for the future of humanity in a world that has seemed so hopeless for so long. I don't think Ellie will be sacrificing herself for the cure or anything like that, but one way they could tie in the events from the first 2 games in a third installment is if whatever happens in part 3 to secure humanity's future is directly linked to the actions and decisions of the characters we've encountered thus far. So even if Ellie herself isn't the cure or humanity's savior, she will still have indirectly, and maybe even unknowingly, contributed to some form of hope for a future she may or may not get to see. So those are my theories for part 3. Let me know what you think about my theories, and if you have any of your own, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video and checking out my content. If you're interested in hearing more, I have a plethora of video essays up on my channel analyzing various aspects from The Last of Us and other games, and feel free to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to be notified when I upload. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee linked in the description if you feel inclined to caffeinate me while I create my next video. Thanks again, and until next time, endure and survive.
Thank you.